Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about defining the foundation stone. So this was this germ of this idea that Saint Teresa of Avila was convicted by in the middle of all of the chaos of her time and of her order, and she decided we need something stable. Like she says, if anyone should see that her order is falling away in anything, let her try to be a stone on which it can be rebuilt. And so I wanted to ask Sister Gabriella here. Let's define this. What does it mean to be a foundation stone?
Okay, so when I was thinking about the questions that we were going to discuss, they kept coming to my mind the sentence from Rudyard Kipling's poem, You. If you can keep your head while all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. So, first of all, a foundation stone is somebody who doesn't get drawn in when things get chaotic. They have something stable within themselves that they can take a stand on. And the other point is that it's something that other people share. If you're going to build on a foundation stone, then you're aiming at building something, not just for yourself, but for others. So, well, obviously, with uh, St. Teresa, her building would have been the order that she founded, the way of life that she established. Um, but it's basically, in general, a foundation stone is somebody who has a shared ideal, a worthwhile goal, and who can encourage others to keep striving for that goal. You have something to live for yourself, and you could try and live that in the midst of confusion. And as you said, there's a lot of confusion nowadays. There's plenty in her day. There's a lot today. So, as a general definition, I think we can go with that.
Okay. How I'm curious for you as what's a story perhaps of somebody in your life over the last, you said, 40 years of now being a discalced Carmelite nun. Do you have an example of somebody that has impressed or inspired you, or maybe it's Saint Teresa herself, where things went sideways and a person didn't lose their sense of self, didn't lose that ability to be a foundation stone for others?
Well, there are quite a number of us because a few years ago, Pope Francis issued a couple of documents for contemplative nuns, Vultum Dei Quaere, Seeking God's Face, and Cor Orans, Praying Heart. And that called for a lot of responsibility on the part of contemplative nuns. We basically had to take responsibility for our own lives. Um, and so living up to the demands of that has been exceedingly challenging, so for some people than for others. But first of all, to accept the challenge of something that the church is asking of you, and then to trust that God will give you the graces to correspond to what the church is asking of you, and to go ahead and do it.
But when we talk about this being applied to the church as a whole, like, is this something that only special people are called to? Or is it a gift or a charism, or is it a practice or something that anybody can learn?
Okay, so for Teresa, obviously, she was just aiming, writing for her own nuns and friars. But when you get down to what it is, it can be applied very much to living the faith. Um, we receive the faith at baptism. And as somebody said, know what you believe and love what you know, and then live it to the best of your ability. So living the faith in each of our specific situations um, will have repercussions on other people. And that's basically what it comes down to being a foundation stone.
So let's get going there because I'll keep asking you for story examples. So perfect opportunity for one. What would be an example, especially today, or maybe in history, of what it looks like?
Well, okay. Back in the most people, when they think of spirituality and great saints, um, they're very impressed by penitential practices and sleeping on boards, fasting, all that sort of thing. And that's important, and it goes back to the first friars, monks, actually monks, back in the 4th century. But it's not the essential. There was one of the great saints of the fathers of the desert who lived in the desert in Egypt, Saint Macarius, who died around 389. He was exceedingly ascetic. Apparently, he only ate once a week, and I know I could never manage that one. Um, but he wrote himself that God revealed to him one day that he was not yet as holy as two married women who lived in a certain town. So he went to see, and he found two women who spoke, as he wrote, no rash or idle words, who lived in humility, patience, and charity, who sanctified their actions with prayer, and put up with the humors of their husbands. And that is
Mm.
very much everyday life.
I think that's to your point from one of our previous conversations here. We talked about if you're living as a hermit, it's pretty easy to be in silence and solitude, but learning how to put up with the humors of the rest of the members of your order and still maintain that inner peace and that sense of stability, well, that's where you're actually there's a chance for growth. Um, so, okay, isn't this living an ordinary life then as a believer?
Yes, and it's very interesting that John Henry Newman had a special admiration of people who live ordinary lives. In fact, he wrote, consider how great a profession, and yet a profession how unconscious and modest, arises from the mere ordinary manner in which any strict Christian lives. Let this thought be a satisfaction to uneasy minds which fear lest they are not confessing Christ, yet dread to display. Your life displays Christ without your intending it. You cannot help it. Your words and deeds will show on the long run where your treasure is and your heart.
Wow. So then it would seem the difference then between um, someone in an ordinary life living up being a foundation stone and then a Carmelite. Well, actually, what would you say is the difference between those?
Okay, the difference is that as religious, we publicly profess the vows that we are going to try and do this.
I see.
So we basically put ourselves on a stand and present ourselves as models. And of course, when we fail, it's pretty drastic. But when we succeed, like Saint Teresa of Lisieux, who lived an ordinary life with ordinary people and didn't practice anything extraordinary, and yet she's been called the greatest saint of modern times.
So those two married women, then you do class them as foundation stones.
Oh, definitely. And 1700 years later, they're still remembered and presented as role models.
Amazing. I love that in so many of these stories of especially the early church fathers, the desert church fathers and mothers, how often they're surprised by these funny conversations they have, or just strange people living on the edges of towns who have none of their overt convictions, but have an incredible depth that surprises them. So, okay, we're going to come back now and chat about the impact of being a foundation stone. So stay with us, friends.